So now, if we were going to manually lay out our scroll list and just populate each of the buttons by hand, we would actually be somewhat done, right? We've got a list of buttons that are stretching to fit the panel and can scroll and so on. But we want to go a step further because we want to be able to set our buttons up dynamically, right? And populate them from a list of game content. And so we are going to first set up our button with the UI that it's going to need to display the icon and the text and the price. And then we're going to make a prefab out of that. So with the button highlighted, let's right click it and choose UI image, frame selected so we can see it clearly. So here, I'm just going to tint this a little bit. I'll have to tint it back later, but just so you can see during the layout process. So we've got our image. I am going to hold down Option to set or hold down Alt since I'm on Windows, and click here to set the pivot and the position, or set the position. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the width to be a little lower. Let's do 75 by 75, and I'm going to position it maybe 100. That's maybe too much. Let's do 75 as well. Away from the edge, just so it doesn't get caught up on the edge. And then we are going to position our text to be in the upper right, anchored in the upper right corner, and center and middle aligned. That's too far. Let's just position this. Let's actually adjust the position here. Let's position it sort of over here and up a little bit. That's about right. And then this is going to be, and let's make it bigger too. Let's make it 18 point. And then this is going to be the item name. Let's call this name text. And then I'm going to duplicate it and Option click to anchor it in the lower corner and move it over right about there. This is going to be the price text. Let's just put that under the name text. And this is going to be the icon image. All right, I'm going to set it back to white so it doesn't tint my sprites when I put them in there. I just feel like it was easier to lay out with it tinted. And let's call this sample button. And we're going to create a prefab of this. So I'm going to select my assets folder, right click, and choose create folder. And we're going to call this folder prefabs, and then drag our sample button into the prefabs folder to make a prefab of it. Okay, so now we have some of what we need, but what we're going to do is we're going to add a small script to this button prefab in order to have it set its own name, price, and icon. And so we're going to, the way I like to do this is I'll just type the name of the script that I want. Since it doesn't exist yet, it gives us an option to create a new script. And then I'm going to create and add. Note that I've done this with the prefab in the project folder selected, so it's added directly to the prefab. Okay, so let's double click this to close that without saving. We'll open this. And so, let me just pull up my notes. So, we're going to, because of the way these scripts are structured, we're going to be moving in. I'm not going to write any given script in a full pass. We're going to be moving back and forth between scripts because they do interact with each other. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up what we need to display in the sample button first, and then we'll come back to handle the portions that control interactivity. So we're not going to need the update function. We can delete that. And we are going to add some public variables. So the first is going to be a public variable of the type button. Now notice this can't autocomplete because I have not yet added the using Unity Engine.ui namespace, right? So in order to use button, text, image, all of those types, we need to be using Unity Engine.ui. And so we're going to add a public button called button. We're going to add a public text called name label. And this is going to be that text object that we just created. We're going to have a public text called price label and a public image called icon image. And so these are all going to be set in the inspector so that our sample button script can control and set the content of the two text objects and the image object. Okay. I am going to add one empty function here, which is going to be a public function that returns void called setup. And I'm going to leave that there so that it's sort of a little bit ready when we come back to it. Let's save this. And let me take a quick look at the chat and see how you guys are doing, and then we will continue.